John Ulzheimer is known as one of our nation's most recognized credit experts. Having worked for 28 years in the credit industry, John has become one of the most prolific speakers about credit and the go-to authority on answers to credit-related questions. Credit Countdown with John Ulzheimer.
Hello, this is John Ulzheimer. I am a consumer credit expert. I have over 30 years of experience in the credit industry. I have spent time at FICO, which is the company behind the FICO credit scoring system, and Equifax, which is one of the three generally recognized credit reporting agencies in the United States. So today's question is, what are some of the items that can lead to major changes in a consumer's credit score? So this is talking specifically about FICO scores, Vantage Score credit scores. So those are the two commonly used credit scoring platforms in the United States. So we all know that there are items on a credit report that if they change, that the change can be influential to someone's credit score. So let's talk about some of the minor ones. So an inquiry is a really good example of something that if it hits someone's credit report might cause the score to change. It's not a guarantee. Some people represent that inquiries always cause the score to be lower. That's incorrect. They may or may not cause the score to be lower. And if they are, if they do lead to a meaningful difference in score, then that difference is going to be relatively minor. So that's a really good example of a minor change. Let's talk about some of the ones that would lead to major score changes. And as I'm going through this, I'm going to put a disclaimer here that it's likely going to depend consumer to consumer, but generally speaking, I'm going to give you some cherry-picked examples of where something hitting your credit report can lead to a meaningful change in the score. So if you've got really good credit scores, so let's say, for example, 750 and above, those are generally considered to be elite credit scores because you're getting pretty much whatever you want at really good rates and terms. So if something derogatory hits your credit report, then it's very likely that it's going to lead to a major change in your score. So something could be all of a sudden you have an account that is reporting as being past due. You could have a new collection that hits your credit report. Maybe if you filed bankruptcy and the bankruptcy filing hits your credit report, although you probably don't have a score in the 750s, if you're having to file bankruptcy, you're probably defaulting on things already. But if hypothetically that happens for you, then that can be the cause of a major change, a public record hitting your credit report. So let's talk about, I think it's important to also set reasonable expectations. Just because one of these things hits your credit report doesn't mean that your score is always going to tank. If your score is already poor, meaning your scores are not in the 750s, then it is possible that something derogatory can hit your credit report and will not have very much of an influence or not have any influence at all because your credit scores are already being depressed by other unrelated derogatory information. So that's why it's important to not fall into this trap of always thinking that if something derogatory hits your credit report, that your score is always going to go down. It's not how credit scoring systems work. Some people believe that every single item on a credit report is worth some X number of points, and when it hits your credit report, your score goes down by some fixed number. That's not, unfortunately, that's what happens when too many people blog about credit scores and they really don't know what they're talking about, is it kind of pollutes the environment with all this incorrect information that all of a sudden now has this life. The way credit scoring systems work, some things may count in your score, some things may not count. And just because something counts for one particular consumer, it doesn't mean it's going to count for another consumer because their credit report profile may be different. And so one thing may be influential and one thing may be not so influential. And the derogatory information is a great example. So another one to keep in mind is the utilization. So utilization is the relationship between the balances on your credit cards and the credit limits on your credit cards. People tend to focus a lot on utilization, especially around the holiday season, because people tend to get into a lot of credit card debt around that time. If you run up a really large balance on your cards, you're going to increase the ratio of your balance to limit. Your balance to limit ratio is going to go up and your credit score can go down. The last one that's also really important that people tend to forget about is the average age of the accounts on their credit report. If you have a relatively old credit report and then all of a sudden a lot of the old stuff is removed for whatever reason, and your credit report all of a sudden looks very, very young, your credit score can go down even though you really haven't done anything wrong, meaning you haven't missed a payment, you haven't maxed out a credit card. But in both FICO's and VantageScore's credit scores, the average age of your accounts is a pretty important factor. In FICO specifically, it's worth 15% of the points in your score. And think about that. If your score went down by 5% or by 10%, that's a major drop, especially if you're a marginal borrower. So those are some of the things that can cause your scores to go down. Try to avoid them if possible, and then you won't have to worry about those types of things. If you have any questions about these things, drop them in the section below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day. We'll talk again soon.
For more videos and credit tips from John Ulzheimer, go to www.tradelinesupply.com.